Alrighty, we are up. Good afternoon, Big Al here on this Tuesday, May 31st, 2022. And today we're talking all about day television and radio does this to divide out the hours of a broadcast day. So, what does it all mean? Well, let's jump right into this, shall we? Starting off with radio day party. In broadcast programming, day parting is the practice of dividing the broadcast day into several parts in which a different type of radio programming or television show appropriate for a said time period is aired. Television programs are more often geared rather towards a particular demographic and what the target audience typically engages at that time. Now, we'll be going more in depth on television day parting, so we're going to start off with radio day parting. That's radio day parting in North America, the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Nielsen Audio, which was known as Arbitron until merging with Nielsen Holdings in 2013, is the leading audience measured service in the United States and divides a weekday schedule into 5 day parts. Now, times may vary by time zone. I'm basing this off of Eastern time. Morning drive time is labeled as 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., although there are some stations that begin morning drive programs as early as 5 a.m. Middays are generally between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. For some stations, maybe as early as 9 a.m. Afternoon drive time is slated as 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., although some stations begin afternoon drive at 2. Predominantly the Central and Mountain time zones, and probably a few stations in the Pacific time zone as well. Evenings are listed as 7 p.m. to midnight, and overnights are listed as midnight to 6 a.m. In radio broadcasting, though through most of the 1990s, day parting was also used for censorship purposes. Many songs that were deemed unsuitable for young listeners were played only during the late evening and or overnight hours, when children were presumably asleep. Even today, the Federal Communications Commission, or the FCC, dictates less stringent decency requirements for programming aired between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. The drive time day parts coincide with rush hour. These day parts are traditionally the most listened to portions of the schedule, since these are the times when most people are in their cars, where vehicle audio remain nearly ubiquitous. Most radio stations, both talk and music, air local programming in one or both drive time slots. The midday slot, that's the 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. portion of the schedule, otherwise known as the at-work slot, has in recent years become particularly prone to voice tracking, as large station groups such as iHeartMedia, Odyssey, and Cumulus cut costs and use supposedly local DJs at multiple stations, often in different time zones. Music stations are careful not to repeat songs during the midday shift, as they generally have a captive audience. and will often use 9 to 5 no repeat work days and all requests or specialty lunch hours to have listeners rather, and broadcast a broader variety of music. Evenings are a popular time for syndicated programming, while the overnight period, again that's midnight to 6 a.m., according to Nielsen, are generally automated, either with or without a voice track DJ. Though there are a few niche programs that target special audiences during the overnight and early morning hours, such as Coast to Coast AM, Red Eye Radio, and the National Farm Report. On weekends, music stations will often air syndicated programming without regard to time slots. Those Saturday nights remain live with either local or syndicated hosts, especially on oldies and country music stations, to take requests. And on talk stations, they air niche program network shows or brokered programming. Public affairs and religious programming often air on Sunday mornings. In talk radio, where voice tracking is impossible and syndicated content is live and national, the lines here blur somewhat. Rush Limbaugh's show had aired in a time slot that was in midday in all time zones. But other than that, and overnight programs such as Coast to Coast AM, which is a program that airs in a time slot corresponding to afternoon drive time in the Pacific time zone, i.e. Lars Larson, will fall into a less listened to evening time slot on the East Coast, as Lars Larson's talk show is based out of Portland, Oregon. Likewise, a show that airs during early midday on the East Coast, like the Glenn Beck program based in New York, would be aired during the morning drive on the West Coast and may not line up to the expectations of listeners expecting locally informative content. The general solution for this problem is to broadcast delayed programming to fit schedules, though another problem develops where West Coast listeners are unable to interact with those programs unless they stream said programs live from a radio station east of them. All right, so that's radio Dayparting. Give me just a second. I'll be right back. We'll talk about television Dayparting. All right, I'm back. And now we'll talk about television Dayparting. In the United States, Dayparting is by far the most common among the big three networks, ABC, NBC, and CBS. And all of them continue to produce programming for a wide array of audiences. This programming strategy is known as full-service radio. This is also generally true of other countries where the major terrestrial broadcasters have more general audiences. And of course, we're talking about television day parting primarily in the United States. We'll talk about Canada a little bit too. Cable and satellite channels, most of which cater to smaller niche audiences, generally use much simpler programming strategies, airing infomercials in the morning, reruns often in block programming or in marathon format in the daytime, and feature programming in prime time, replayed late nights. Though this structure varies, some networks may opt out or opt not to lease out certain time periods to infomercials and programming during the overnight and morning hours, with entertainment programs instead. United States cable news outlets such as CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC typically program a network-style morning show, rolling news coverage in the daytime, and opinion programming or long-form document at night. Sports network ESPN follows that similar format, but with live sporting events in prime time, while its opinion programs air on its sister network ESPN2. Networks such as MTV, BET, and VH1 that feature music programming may devote their morning and or midday blocks to music videos, while children's networks such as Nickelodeon and Disney Channel generally air programs for preschool children during the early morning hours in the form of blocks such as Nick Jr. and Disney Jr. PBS carries a similar lineup known as Pbs Kids, while broadcast networks carry syndicated content. Some air older programs such as Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry on Cartoon Network during middays while children are at school, while programs for older children and high school teenagers air during the late afternoon hours, particularly after 3 o'clock. During prime time, programs that are generally aimed at the entire family, such as movies which Disney Channel airs, are common. Cartoon Network switches from children's programming later in the evening to carry the adult-oriented live-action/animated block Adult Swim, which runs late nights. All right. And just like on radio, television is also broken up into different parts of the day. The first is morning television, which is generally 6 to 10 a.m. On television, like on radio, as I just said, the day is divided into similar day parts, although the times have been blurred somewhat. That being said, it all depends on what time zone you're in. In general, breakfast television programs air between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. Those shows, of course, being CBS Mornings, The Today Show on NBC, and Good Morning America on ABC. These network television programs are usually long-form news programs featuring entertainment, light fare, and features aimed towards women. Until the 70s or so, children's programs such as Captain Kangaroo aired in this time slot. Since that time, however, the school day has started much earlier, making such programs unviable. After breakfast television, you have daytime television, and this time slot runs between 10 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. Again, these are Eastern time, so again, it all depends on what time zone you're in. This daypart targets college students, older retirees, and the ever-shrinking base of stay-at-home moms and housewives. Soap operas, tabloid talk shows, court programs, and the game show, which is much more rarely since the 1990s, are popular genres in this day part. In the United States and Canada, a local newscast also airs during the noon hour on most stations. This is not always the case for some, who will schedule their midday an hour early at 11 a.m. PBS and other non-commercial public broadcasting networks generally broadcast educational programs aimed at children, especially toddlers and preschool children, such as Sesame Street, throughout the early and later portions, of the daytime slot, while some broadcast other alternative programs such as cooking shows during the midday period. Cable and satellite networks generally broadcast an occasional movie during the daytime or acquired programming. The latter portion of the daytime slot can sometimes be targeted at children ages 7 through 12 and teenagers aged 13 through 16 as they come home from school. Over-the-air broadcast networks such as Fox and the now defunct WB had children's programming blocks during the mid-90s and into the early 2000s. PBS traditionally broadcast educational children's programming until approximately 5 p.m. local time in most areas. Some PBS stations broadcast children's programs until and some as late as 7 p.m. From 5 to 7 p.m. in the United States, this can sometimes be as early as 4 p.m. or in some places as early as 3. Newscasts are usually shown on most television stations. Local news is usually coupled with a 30-minute network newscast like the CBS News, NBC's Nightly News with Lester Holt, and ABC's World News Tonight with David Muir, and possibly in a syndicated news program such as Inside Edition. Unlike the morning news counterparts, the evening newscasts are more generally targeted programs and feature more hard news stories, and network evening news, unlike their local counterparts, tend to limit weather and sports coverage unless it's a notable news story. Like, say, if a tornado is a path of destruction somewhere and kills a lot of people, that would be a notable news story. In the United States, stations affiliated with minor networks like the CW, or that have no network affiliation at all, usually will air syndicated sitcom reruns or continue daytime programming during this portion of the day part. Following the news, prime time begins with what is referred to as fringe time or the access period. By the way, early fringe is 4:30 to 7:30 p.m. and prime access, as it's called, is 7:30 to 8 p.m. Again, following the news, prime time begins with what is referred to usually as fringe time or the access period. Again, that's 7:30 to 8 p.m. and it all depends on which time zone you are in. This is named after the prime time access rule of the 1970s, in which former legislation in the United States previously required networks to not air network-supplied programming in that hour. In the United States and in Canada to a certain extent, two game shows, Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, have dominated this time slot since the 80s. And they visually compete with syndicated entertainment magazines such as Entertainment Tonight and Extra, and syndicated reruns of popular primetime programs such as Seinfeld, Friends, Young Sheldon, etc. Additional newscasts have become increasingly popular in this time slot. There are some television stations in the Eastern Time Zone that launch 7 p.m. newscasts. All right, now we've come prime time. This is where the most eyeballs are on television of any given time of the day. And that's between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. Again, this is Eastern Time. Prime time is the highest profile television day part, running from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern and Pacific Time, and 7 to 10 p.m. Central and Mountain Time, as well as in Alaska and Hawaii. Again, this all depends on the network and the time zone, but depends more so on the time zone than anything. The highest rated programs on television often air during prime time and are almost all scripted programming, with the exception of soap operas, game shows, and most recently sketch comedy programs, air during this period. Occasionally, especially during the 1980s and the 2000s, programs that were daytime oriented sometimes entered a prime time slot, such as the popular 80s nighttime soap Dallas and the long-running Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Usually, the main reason for the high profile of primetime television is due to the fact that many people who come home from work or school tend to watch television rather than engage in other activities. In North America, Friday nights are often considered to be the Friday night death slot, due to the concept that many shows scheduled on Friday nights or moved to Friday nights would not last long before cancellation due to low ratings. Some shows, however, have bucked this trend and achieved success on Friday nights, even with the notion of the perceived death slot. Examples include CBS's Hawaii Five-0, Blue Bloods, and MacGyver, ABC's defunct TGIF lineup, which featured programs such as Family Matters, Boy Meets World, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, so on and so forth. And more recently, another ABC series, Shark Tank. Another successful program on Friday nights was Homicide: Life on the Street on NBC, where its ratings were very solid for moving to Friday nights back in 1994. And most recently, The Blacklist, which also airs on NBC. Other television death slots include Saturday nights, the 12 noon and 4 p.m. time slots, Monday through Fridays, at least during the 1980s. Both time slots have since been abandoned by every network and given to local news or syndication. And the time slot or time immediately opposite popular shows such as American Idol, previously on Fox, now running on ABC, and the Super Bowl. Now, I'll be talking about Super Bowl counter programming in another video soon, so watch out for that. The phenomenon... I can't read this. The phenomenon of viewers, sorry about that, on Friday and Saturday is in part because most people, in particular the younger audience in which advertisers seek, are usually not at home on Saturday nights to watch television, as they are out pretty much having fun like they usually do on the weekends. And as a result, programs that air on those nights, more so Saturdays than any other night of the week, generally receive low ratings. However, some cable channels aimed at children, teenagers, or pre-adolescents, such as Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, and Disney Channel, have experienced success with original programs that commonly air in the perceived Friday and Saturday night depth slots. Nickelodeon in particular has aired first-run teen programs on prime time on Saturday nights since 1992 with the invention of the Snick brand, which was later rebranded Teen Nick from 2004 to 2009, as well as ABC's TGIF lineup back in the late 80s and into the 90s. Following prime time is late local news, and that's 11 o'clock to 11:35 p.m. Eastern and Pacific, or 10 o'clock to 10:35 Eastern and Pacific, or rather 10 o'clock to 10:35 Central and Mountain, as well as in Alaska and Hawaii. And then that's followed by late night television. Late night programs are predominantly targeted towards younger male audiences, college students, and people suffering from insomnia. I should know I'm one of them. These programs feature a common format of a male host, i.e. Jimmy Fallon, Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel, etc., delivering a stand-up comedy routine, aka the monologue, centered around current events, followed by several guests and a house band's performance. And late night television, according to Nielsen, is referred to as 11:35 p.m. to 1 a.m. and then post-late fringe, which is 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. That brings us to the overnight period. After late night ends, programming varies. This time slot between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. is known as the overnight slot or the graveyard slot due to its extremely low number of viewers. This day part is the only portion of the broadcast day not monitored on or reported by Nielsen in the United States in most circumstances, although many stations still consider this to be a viable programming day part and actively sell commercial breaks. Some television stations may sign off the air for the night, though this practice has become less common since the 1980s. They also would air paid programs or infomercials, or air news or reruns of other programming. This time slot is also used as a time slot to burn off programming. Burn off means to air programming in which the station is obligated to air and is not concerned with viewership, often after an announced cancellation of said program or due to poor ratings performance. This day part can also be used to air programming intended to be recorded via DVR, a practice known as time shifting. Or a spot to air programming preempted from another day part due to breaking news, live sports, or other program interruptions. Many stations rebroadcast their late local news at or around 2 a.m. with an on-air disclaimer that indicates that the program is pre-recorded. PBS member stations may also air encores of children's programming on a digital sub-channel at this time. All right. Weekends have a slightly different setup than days. On Saturday mornings, programs like the Saturday morning cartoon, where the networks usually fulfill federally mandated regulations requiring the airing of educational or children's programs, such as regulations on children's television programming in the United States, where at least 3 hours of this programming must air across all television stations each week. Although most of the children's programs today have increasingly become more live action in nature than animated. Sunday mornings, often known as a graveyard slot, particularly very early on Sunday mornings, feature more morning shows, public affairs programming designed for very small audiences, additional infomercials, religious programming, and a series of influential political and news analysis and interview programs known as the Sunday Morning Talk Show. Programs like Meet the Press on NBC, This Week on ABC, Face the Nation on CBS, and Fox News Sunday. Saturday and Sunday afternoons often feature different sporting events to varying degrees. Each of the big four networks carry college football on Saturday afternoons. ABC via ESPN airs college football from virtually every major conference in the country. CBS, of course, has the broadcast rights to the SEC, so they will air the top SEC game on Saturday afternoons and sometimes even on Saturday nights. There will be double headers. Fox airs college football primarily from the Big Ten, Pac-12, and Big 12 conferences. And NBC has the exclusive broadcast rights to every Notre Dame Fighting Irish home football game. If Notre Dame plays on the road, that game's probably going to be on ABC or ESPN. All four networks also aired the NFL, with CBS airing AFC matchups, Fox airing NFC matchups, NBC broadcasting Sunday Night Football, and starting this fall, ABC will simulcast ESPN's Monday Night Football. Both the NBA and NHL air on ABC, I should say. Major League Baseball runs on Fox during the summer. and also airs both the All-Star Game and the World Series. College basketball airs on CBS, ABC, and Fox during the winter and spring. NASCAR airs on both NBC and Fox. NBC also carries IndyCar series, which also features the Indianapolis 500, which we just had the other day as I'm recording this. PGA Tour golf runs on both CBS and NBC, while NBC has the LPGA Tour. In addition, sports anthology series such as the CBS Sports Spectacular, which nowadays can be seen on CBS Sports Network, ABC's Wide World of Sports, which has been off the air for almost 20 years now, NBC's Sports World, and Canada's CBC Sports Saturday airs a broad variety of sports with a smaller following. Most stations also find time when sports are not airing to broadcast large blocks of infomercials and some syndicated programming during this time slot. Cable networks and some broadcast stations frequently air feature films during weekend afternoons. In North America, not many new programs air on Saturday nights, with the focus more on reruns, movies, and sports. This is largely due to the increasing of Saturday primetime as a death slot, which led most American broadcast networks to abandon first-run scripted programs on this night by the mid-2000s. In Canada, CBC Television has historically aired NHL hockey on Saturday nights under the title Hockey Night in Canada, which dates back to the early days of radio. Other Canadian television broadcast networks such as CTV and City TV use the Saturday night time frame to meet Canadian content quotas, a practice known there as Canadian content. Simply put, Fox established a permanent Saturday night sports block in 2012, carrying a range of sports including Pac-12 college football, Major League Baseball, NASCAR, and on some weekends, the Ultimate Championship or the UFC on a periodic basis, while running reruns when sports events are not scheduled. This displayed Fox's long-running Saturday night lineup, which included Cops and America's Most Wanted, both of which ran on Saturday nights on Fox for about 2 decades. ABC broadcasts Saturday Night Football during the fall and then switches to a mix of the NBA, movies, news magazines, and primetime reruns for the remainder of the year. In the United States, late night programming on Saturday features one prominent sketch comedy series on the air since 1975. I think you know what I'm talking about. NBC's Saturday Night Live, while other stations carry syndicated reruns. Sunday evenings are treated like a normal weeknight, with popular primetime programs airing. In the United States and Canada, primetime network programs begin on Sunday nights an hour early at 7 p.m. Eastern and Pacific, 6 p.m. Central and Mountain. This is an exception to the since repealed primetime access rule as part of a 1975 revision that allowed networks to program the time slot on Sunday nights. And no network programming currently airs late nights on Sundays. And that is a look at radio and television day parting. Now, my series on the AM and FM radio stations from across the country continues as I am currently gathering information for the Flint and Tri-Cities radio markets in Michigan. So as I'm continuing my tour of Southern Michigan markets. So I'm in the middle of getting the Flint Saginaw market done. And then I'll reissue the Detroit area radio stations. So be on the watch out for that. Till then, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell twice every time I go live. This is Big Al signing off. Thanks for watching and happy viewing and happy listening. Peace out.